A fashion icon? Or a survival story overshadowed by drug scandals? The real face of Kate Moss comes to light here. But the answer to that question isn't as simple as you might think. Kate's journey stretched from the dazzling lights of the runway to the darkness of underground clubs, from the golden age of the fashion industry to the front pages of scandalous tabloids. And the most surprising part? Despite all the ups and downs, she managed to stay standing. Kate Moss was born in 1974 in Croydon, just outside of London. Croydon at the time was nothing glamorous grey buildings, dull streets, and working-class families. Kate's family fit right into that picture. Her father worked at a travel agency, her mother as a barmaid to support the household. Her childhood wasn't the kind of fairy tale that foreshadowed a future supermodel. In fact, Kate herself later admitted in interviews that her early years were not particularly happy. School wasn't easy for her either. She skipped classes, clashed with teachers, and often stood out with her withdrawn, sometimes rebellious behavior. She was a restless child, closed off at times. Her friends remembering how she'd stare into the distance with smoky eyes, as if dreaming of another world. But fate had other plans that would take her from being just another girl from Croydon to becoming the most talked about woman in the world. And that turning point came through pure coincidence. In 1988, at just 14 years old, returning from a family holiday in the US, she was spotted at JFK Airport in New York by Sarah Doukas, founder of Storm Model Management. That moment changed Kate's life forever. Imagine this, a random teenager at an airport gate, discovered by a major agency head. It sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie, but for Kate, it was reality. Sarah Doukas noticed her sharp features, petite frame, and unique aura. At the time, models like Cindy Crawford and Claudia Schiffer dominated the scene with their Amazonian physique style. Powerful, glamorous. Kate, at only 5 feet 7 inches, 1.70 meters, was smaller, more fragile, and undeniably different. And that difference was exactly what would make her the anti-model who shook the fashion world. Signing with Storm Model Management, Kate started out with small magazine shoots and side projects. By the time she was 15, she was already making waves in London's alternative fashion circles. Her photos carried a strange allure. She wasn't classically beautiful, nor was she ordinary. But in her eyes was a quiet rebellion, something the fashion world hadn't seen in years. In her early portfolio, her aura was obvious. While other models smiled, Kate's face often remained neutral, even melancholic. It sparked curiosity. Who is this girl? Even at the very beginning of her career, it was clear she would stand out from the crowd. From Croydon's grey streets to the first steps inside the fashion world, Kate Moss was, by 16, already one of London's most talked about fresh faces. But she was only at the start of her path. The real stardom would come a few years later with her collaboration with Calvin Klein. For now, hold on to this question. How did this small, fragile-looking girl rise to the top of an industry ruled by towering supermodels? And even more importantly, how did that same journey drag her straight into the center of drug scandals? The real turning point in Kate Moss's life came with her collaboration with Calvin Klein. In 1992, at just 18 years old, she became the face of the brand's iconic Obsession campaign. The photos and commercials caused shockwaves not only in the fashion industry, but in popular culture at large. Why? Because the campaign presented a completely new definition of beauty, not muscular, not powerful, but instead a fragile silhouette. A body that looked almost breakable, paired with a blank, detached expression. At the time, Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, and Claudia Schiffer dominated the runways with their strong Amazonian image. Kate Moss, on the other hand, represented something entirely different. Her look would go on to define what critics and the press later called heroin chic. Pale skin, sharp cheekbones, thin arms, and an expressionless stare. It was the complete opposite of the glowing, healthy standards of beauty that had been celebrated until then. The campaign, created by Calvin Klein's creative director Fabien Baron and shot by photographer Mario Sorrenti, instantly propelled Kate to global fame. But it also sparked enormous controversy. The imagery was described by some as overly sexualized and even as glamorizing drug addiction. Headlines questioned, is this girl a healthy young woman, or the symbol of a dangerous lifestyle? Amidst all this, Kate Moss was steadily building her identity as the anti-supermodel. While the fashion world worshipped tall, curvy, glamorous women, Kate was the exact opposite. And that contrast made her a phenomenon. Because fashion is always looking for the next new face, and Kate was it, her Calvin Klein collaboration didn't just catapult her to stardom, it also opened the door to an entirely new fashion era. By the mid-1990s, heroin chic wasn't just Kate Moss's look. It was everywhere. Ad campaigns and editorials featured pale, tired, bohemian-looking models. Makeup was stripped back, photos leaned into dark, melancholic aesthetics. And the face of it all? Kate Moss. But fame came with a heavy price. Even as a teenager, she became a prime target for paparazzi and tabloids. Photographers caught her leaving nightclubs, and the headlines screamed, "Kate parties again." The press began linking her extreme thinness and weary appearance to rumors of drug use. Kate denied the accusations repeatedly. But the photos often spoke louder than her words. Still, her career soared. Chanel, Versace, Dior. By the mid-1990s, Kate Moss wasn't just a face, she was a phenomenon. Her presence alone could sell a magazine cover. Yet beneath the surface, this period was also the beginning of personal turbulence. The press no longer focused solely on her professional achievements, they wanted every detail of her private life. And then, one man entered her story who would make it even more dramatic. Johnny Depp, her relationship with Hollywood's ultimate bad boy, would turn them into an iconic couple and the obsession of the media. By the mid-1990s, Kate Moss was no longer just a model. She was a phenomenon, the face of an entire movement, and the most talked-about name in fashion. Every magazine cover, every ad campaign, every runway seemed to revolve around her. But what made her legendary wasn't just her influence on fashion, it was also her personal life, which became just as newsworthy as her steps on the runway. In 1994, Johnny Depp entered her life and her story reached a new level. At the time, Johnny was Hollywood's rebellious golden boy, seen as the James Dean of his generation. Kate Moss was the anti-supermodel star of the fashion world. Together, they became the press's ultimate goldmine. Every photo of them made headlines, and paparazzi followed their every move. Kate and Johnny became one of the most iconic couples of the era. In New York's luxury hotels, London's underground clubs, Paris's fashion parties, wherever they went, the cameras were there. But their relationship wasn't just glitter and glamour. Heated breakups, dramatic reconciliations, endless rumors, their love was nothing short of stormy. One infamous incident in 1994 cemented their reputation. The fight at the Mark Hotel in New York, in a fit of rage. Johnny Depp trashed a hotel room, the police were called, and the story exploded in the press. The scandal only added to their rock and roll legend. The media branded Kate as the mysterious beauty of the rebel lover. But for Kate, the relationship was more than tabloid fodder. Johnny Depp left a deep mark on her life. Years later, she admitted that after their breakup, she felt completely lost. For her, Johnny wasn't just a lover. He was one of the few people she truly trusted. The end of that relationship pushed her into an even more vulnerable place. At the same time, the fashion world was embracing heroin chic at full force. Kate Moss was both the face and the symbol of this aesthetic. Pale skin, a thin frame, tired eyes, this look had become the very language of 90s fashion campaigns. But criticism was growing louder. Health organizations and even politicians accused the industry of glamorizing drug use. In fact, in 1997, US President Bill Clinton publicly stated, "Heroin chic sends the wrong message to young people," directly calling out the fashion industry. And at the center of this controversy were Kate Moss's images. Despite the backlash, Kate's star didn't fade. On the contrary, each scandal seemed to make her even more famous. In a way, thriving off scandal became part of her brand. The fashion world fed off her uniqueness, while the press feasted on her turmoil. By the late 1990s, Kate Moss was the face of Calvin Klein, Chanel, Dior, and Versace. She graced Vogue covers around the globe. Photographers like Mario Testino and Jürgen Teller saw her as a muse. But behind the curtain, paparazzi flashes, club exits, and increasingly loud drug rumors were casting a long shadow over her private life. This was Kate Moss's peak. On one side, the queen of fashion ruling her throne. On the other, a fragile woman relentlessly hunted by paparazzi and scandal. This duality defined both her strength and her weakness. But the real storm hadn't hit yet. As the 2000s began, Kate Moss was about to face a scandal so explosive it threatened to destroy her career completely. By the 2000s, Kate Moss was still one of fashion's most in-demand faces. But her name was no longer tied only to runways and magazine covers. It had become synonymous with nightclubs, alcohol, and drug rumors. Paparazzi followed her relentlessly, catching her stumbling out of clubs in the early morning hours, images that splashed across tabloids worldwide. Then, in 2005, the rumors exploded into a full-blown scandal. The British tabloid Daily Mirror published covert photographs of Kate Moss allegedly using cocaine in a studio. The images shocked the world. For years, she had been linked to the heroin chic aesthetic and surrounded by whispers of drug use. But this time, the evidence was undeniable. Headlines screamed, "Cocaine Kate." Overnight, she became the center of a media firestorm.
And the consequences came fast.
H&M, Chanel, and Burberry, three of the biggest brands in fashion, canceled their multi-million-dollar contracts with her. In just a matter of weeks, the world's most bankable supermodel faced the very real possibility of losing her entire career. This was one of the darkest chapters of her life. Paparazzi camped outside her home, documenting her every move. The press declared, "Kate Moss is finished." Fashion magazines speculated that her runway days were over. Many even predicted that she was heading toward the same tragic fate as Gia Karangi, another model whose life was destroyed by drugs. But Kate Moss's story didn't end there. Because she had something that defined her throughout her entire career: survival instincts. After the scandal broke, she publicly apologized. She admitted she was seeking treatment for her drug use and promised to make changes in her life. That public statement marked the beginning of her comeback. Still, rebuilding her career was no easy task. Fashion is brutal. It will crown you queen one day and discard you the next. During this time, Kate had to win back both the industry's trust and the public's faith. And here, her charisma, her individuality, and her undeniable influence on style became her greatest weapons. Incredibly, just 1 year later, in 2006, brands began calling her back. Some even capitalized on the drama, crafting Kate's comeback campaigns. Her partnership with Topshop, in particular, connected her with a younger generation of fashion lovers. By then, she wasn't just a model, she was a brand. A style icon whose presence carried its own weight. In the end, the 2005 scandal didn't destroy Kate Moss, it added to her legend. Instead of fading away, she became one of the rare supermodels who could fall hard and still rise again. But the question always lingered: was this revival permanent, or just a temporary pause before the next downfall? By the mid-2000s, Kate Moss once again managed to shock the world. Just 1 year after the 2005 drug scandal that could have ended her career forever, she came back as one of the most powerful figures in fashion. Normally, such a scandal would have buried a model for good. But Kate Moss became known as the supermodel who never falls. In 2006, she returned to the runway, graced magazine covers, and brands lined up to work with her. The Topshop collaboration in particular connected her not just with the elite fashion world, but also with a younger audience. She designed her own collections, created chaos at store openings, and proved she wasn't just a model, she was also a fashion entrepreneur. In the following years, she worked again with giants like Longchamp, Louis Vuitton, and Dior photographers. Especially Mario Testino described her comeback as nothing less than a victory. Vogue covers were once again filled with her face, and fashion shows felt incomplete without her. But this wasn't only a professional victory. Kate Moss was also learning to find balance in her personal life. The birth of her daughter, Lila Grace, opened a new chapter. She was no longer just a model, she was a mother. In interviews, she often spoke about the inspiration she drew from her daughter, describing motherhood as the strongest anchor keeping her grounded in real life. Of course, the paparazzi never left her alone. Her private relationships, her nights out, her parties, everything still made headlines. But Kate's image had shifted. She was no longer only the queen of scandals. She had become something else, a survivor icon, a woman who could withstand anything. By the 2010s, Kate Moss was a living legend. She had not only survived but dominated 3 different decades of fashion. In the 1990s, she was the anti-supermodel. In the 2000s, she was at the center of scandal. And in the 2010s, she became the woman who turned into an icon. Even today, Kate Moss's influence is still felt. Her daughter, Layla Grace Moss, has followed in her footsteps, continuing the legacy. New generations of models walk the path Kate carved out. Heroin chic may remain controversial, but her impact is undeniable. Her story is a lesson. You can fall, you can be criticized, and people may count you out. But what truly matters is whether you rise again. Kate Moss did exactly that. She fell, stood up again, fell once more, and rose stronger every single time. When people mention her name today, they don't just think of a model, they remember an era. Because Kate Moss is not just a woman. She's one of the most unforgettable faces in fashion history. A survival story, a cultural icon, and perhaps most importantly, her story proved that even flaws can become iconic. In an age where perfect beauty ruled, Kate Moss became an icon because of her difference. Even in the shadow of scandal, she never lost her light. That's why Kate Moss remains a legend.